Hey, greetings. It's Fred in Alaska. Thanks for joining me. Um, so, what I wanted to share with you today, first, I want to thank everyone for subscribing to the channel, the new channel members, and all that. I appreciate you guys being here and partaking in what's going on. But what I wanted to share with you today, it was a group of 3 people. They were east of Day Harbor. Now, I'll pull that up on the map for reference, and you'll notice in this particular area, it kind of looks like a seawall almost going across, right? So there was 3 of them, 1 woman, 2 guys. Let's call them Bill, Brad, and Connie. Okay. So Bill was the leader of this little expedition. They had left Seward. They were basically just going out and about, seeing what they could find on the beaches, and maybe do a little, fishing for rockfish or something like that, and maybe see the orcas. It was just supposed to be a good time, a little fun time, right? So Bill, Brad, and Connie, when they parked the boat and they took a dinghy in, they got to shore there, and what they did is they headed east along that little quasi seawall type structure and started wrapping up and going up the mountain. Bill and Brad were armed. Connie was not. Connie was carrying basically their lunch, which was freeze dried, mountain meals or whatever. And so Bill and Brad, they were doing a lot of talking about the deer sign, and they were going back and forth arguing about, fishing game doesn't recognize them this far north and blah, blah, blah. So being the Gulf of Alaska, there's according to Fish and Game, there's a difference between Prince William Sound and the Gulf of Alaska as far as the dispersion of black-tailed deer. But anyway, it's a pointless argument because there's sign. If you see tracks, there's something there, right? So Bill and Brad going back and forth, they weren't necessarily paying attention to their surroundings, right? And so they're hiking up, and this is earlier in the season, so the vegetation isn't super overgrown and the undergrowth isn't like fully filled in like this stuff around me here. Before long it's going to be big and bushy, and it's going to be hard moving through here, and this is just my backyard. So as they were going up and having this little discussion back and forth, they had their rifles slung, and they weren't concerned about bears. It's not typically a spot where a lot of bear activity happens. And so with that, they were kind of at ease about bears, and basically brought the firearms just in case, right? So as they were going up, they had stopped at this little bit of a shelf, a little bit of a plateau, and it's kind of hard to see on the map. I'll try to highlight it in yellow dots or something. But on this plateau where they were standing, they were still having this ridiculous back and forth for whatever reason. I think it was just guys, according to what Brad said, it was more ego driven, like I know more than you kind of thing, even though they're buddies forever, and it was a pointless argument. But they're still stuck on that, right? And poor Connie, she had circled around behind them more further uphill. She went up just a little ways, not far, but just kind of getting out of earshot of this ridiculous deer talk. And as she was sitting there, she got an uneasy feeling. And at the same time she got an uneasy feeling, she stood back up and started walking back down towards them, not looking behind her. As she was coming down, Bill and Brad both turned because her movement, caught their attention. They turned, and they both go pale white. And that noise is just a 4-wheeler in the background, so don't worry. People leave comments about noises in the background, and it sounds like growling. Well, it's either road noise or a 4-wheeler. Trust me, I wouldn't sit here calmly continuing to record if something was growling. Anyway, so Connie's coming down, and Bill and Brad, they're looking up past her, right? And they both are pale white, and immediately Connie gets concerned because, Brad, her husband, is like, look shocked. And so she picks up her pace. She's only about 15 feet away at this point. She comes down, and turns around to look back with them. Once she gets between them, they all are looking back up the hill, and all they see is this head in the brush. Now, it's not like our, smaller human head. They said this head was humongous, and as they were looking, it was blinking, and its eyes were black, its skin was black tone. It had very, for the most part, really dark black hair with the little bits of grizzled, and it wasn't mangy looking, but they could see parts in the hair that went down to the skin, right along in through here, maybe quasi shoulders, because with the brush moving and stuff, they noticed that it's black skin through the hair. Now, this thing where she was maybe 25 feet away, and this thing, they said the head was big enough that they could get these details at that little bit of a distance. And as they were like looking at each other, like, what are we seeing? This thing stood up, right? Well, when it stood up, they all took off running immediately. They said it was the dumbest thing they ever did. And what do? You know what I mean? You're confronted by a monster standing there. Grant you, there was no aggression shown at that moment, but this thing stands up, and immediately they're freaked out. Boom, and they're breaking trail, and they're running downhill. Now, Connie's in the lead, and Brad and Bill are a little older, a little heftier, right? And Connie was a little more spry, and she's just leaping, going down. She tumbled a couple times. Bill and Brad were basically, a good 40, 50 feet behind her when she stopped and to catch her breath, and she was looking back because she was hearing noises, and she had to see what this noise was because it was so loud. They equated it to a freight train or a big box truck breaking through trees and brush and stuff, right? So at that point, when she stopped and turned around, Bill and Brad are coming towards her. They stop, they unsling their rifles, and they're pointing towards the sound, and they don't see anything, but they see the brush, and just everything just, and it goes down past them. And so they stop, and they're catching their breath, and they're screaming, "What the hell? What the hell?" Connie's like, "Let's get out of here. Let's get out of here." Now, Bill and Brad, they're shouldering their rifles, and they're looking downhill at this noise that just went past, right? And they're trying to figure out what the hell was making that noise. So they decide, because eventually the noise stopped, and they saw the brush, still kind of shimmying from, whatever was there. So they decided they're going to walk towards it and flush it out, right? Connie's telling them, don't, just stay here. Let's go. Let's take the trail. Let's get out of here. Well, as they're walking towards where that noise ended and the brush was still kind of moving, when they got over there, it was a chunk of log. It had to have been, 3 foot in diameter, about 4 foot long. It was a big old hunk of wood from an old logging site somewhere nearby. And what had happened is this thing was thrown, and it was thrown with such force that it rolled down the hill like that, and it gave the impression of that, a box truck or freight train just rushing by. For that kind of force, grant you the weight of the object, of course, comes into play there, but just the force to make it go that far. They estimated it had to have been at least 100 yards that this thing was making this noise, right? And Bill and Brad are lifetime hunters, and they have a good gauge on distance. So as they're examining it, Connie's telling them, "Let's get the hell out of here." And as soon as they realize it's a log, immediately, they're rubbernecking, looking around, trying to figure out what the hell. They look back up in the direction where they saw the head, and this thing stood up, right? And as they do so, they kind of catch it, turn sideways, and kind of going down just over the ridge out of view, not even looking at them. So immediately they feel they're at a safe distance. Bill and Brad, they want to get a better look, right? Brad had some binoculars with the record feature on it, to where whatever you're seeing through the binoculars, you can record, right? So he wanted to, I got these, let's go do this. So Bill and Brad go up about according to what they said, about 70 feet to get up to the top of this ridge to hopefully look back down, right? And as they're up there, Brad's got the binoculars. He's trying to basically record, and he's looking all around. Connie's watching him, and she stayed right where she was, right? So they're just up from her, and they're doing their thing with the binocs, and Bill's standing there with the rifle, and they're trying to see this thing. Well, as they're doing that, they said they got an uneasy feeling, and they turn around because they're not seeing anything. They turn around. Well, what had happened was this thing went out of view, and on their way up to get a view from the top of the ridge to look down at this thing, it had went down and circled around and was now below them, back behind Connie. Now, when they turned around, Brad had already let go of the binoculars and had the rifle in his hand again. And when they turned around, they saw this thing going behind Connie, but it was a good distance away from her. It wasn't right on top of her, right? So they tell her, get down, get down, get down. So she gets down, hunkers down, and she just instinctively covers her ears. That's when Bill fired a shot. Now, Bill said he does not know why he fired a shot. He just knows that he felt he had to in that moment. I ain't gonna argue that, to each his own. I wasn't there for that. But he said the reason he shot was this thing was kind of quartering towards them, but doing the way he said it was like its hips. The way it was moving was its hips were like swaying so exaggerated. It looked unnatural. He said it felt very unnatural, and it scared him to see that movement. He just viewed it as a monster, and he wanted to protect the group, and that's why he fired. He said the one shot he fired hit this thing in the leg. He does not know why it hit so low, because he was aiming up higher, just below the face into the upper chest is where he was aiming when he shot, but somehow it hit it in the leg. He said as soon as it hit it in the leg, this thing took off like just down below them, wrapped around past Connie, of course, because Connie was it was kind of like a V wedge where it came out behind her and was coming back up when he shot, then it took back off, right? So it basically did a complete circle around them, and once it was shot, it went back up past them, just off to the right-hand side. Bill and Brad are both trying to follow it with their rifles, but this thing was outpacing their swing of their firearms. Bill said he instantly regretted shooting. He said it was spur of the moment, just saw the weirdness and just boom, fired, right? Basically out of fear. And right, wrong, or indifferent, shit happens. So they're following it, they're trying to keep track of it as it runs uphill, and pretty soon it's in the brush and they can't see shit. As they're doing that, Connie's freaking out, saying, we have to leave now. And Brad's agreeing. Brad's cleared the distance and caught up to Connie, and he's trying to work these binoculars again, and Connie's holding the rifle, and she's like, put the damn things down, it's gone, let's go. And what Brad was fiddling with was the battery for this little camera device attached to the binoculars wasn't working. It was a dead battery at this point. Bill's still pointing the rifle uphill at what noise they could hear. And as they're doing that, Bill's about, according to what they said, about 40 feet uphill from them, which it's varying in steepness. It kind of ebbs and flows, but it's a fairly steep incline where they happen to be, right? They said as Brad and Connie were looking up past Bill, that's when they saw another hunk of this wood. They assumed it was one of the branches off of one of these old growth trees, and it came kind of like spinning like a boomerang. You could hear it whipping through the air, and it was coming very accurately towards Bill, and they're yelling at Bill because he's looking, but he's kind of stuck. And as soon as they start yelling at him, get down, get down, he jumps out of the way off to his left, and then it hits the ground, bounces a couple times past Brad and Connie, and that's when they double their efforts to get the hell out of there, right? Brad had broke his scope when he jumped out of the way, or Bill did. Bill broke his scope on his rifle when he jumped out of the way. Basically kind of tweaked his stock just a little bit, and they got out of Dodge. They went down to the dinghy, And when they got to the dinghy and they were looking back up, kind of catching their breath and like, what the hell is this shit? You know, what's going on? As they were doing that, they heard a very loud whistle, very sharp, crisp, very loud whistle come from the direction where this thing went. And as they're standing there like, whoa, that is loud, man. What the hell? You know, that was a Bigfoot. That was a freaking Bigfoot. You know, they were going back and forth. Well, off to their left, about maybe 50 yards away in some thick brush on a steeper part of that little mountainside there was another whistle, twice as loud and twice as long. And it felt like it was directed directly at them. So they said they felt that whistle, that sharp piercing sound was just, they said they felt it throughout their body. Immediately, they jump in the dinghy, head back out to the boat, and they got the hell out of there. I want to thank them for sharing that. They were, Bill was very reluctant to share. I assured him anonymity, change his name, leave certain aspects out that could potentially identify him. Brad and Connie, I want to especially thank them because they were the ones that one of their good friends pointed them in my direction, because they kept telling their friend that they didn't feel they could tell anyone about this. And that's when the friend said, hey, well, there is someone you could tell, and you know, it can get at least the warning out, you know, of the area. So this is east of Day Harbor. Again, you should have already seen that on the map and whatnot. And these dots I use on the map are not exact. These are from people's memory, unless they had literally marked it on a topographical. This is an approximation, so keep that in mind. And also, what else? Oh, I want to thank their friend that pointed them this direction to share with us. What else was there? Man, I'm trying to think. There's a lot of background stuff going on. Some interesting, exciting things coming up here in the very near future. We'll cover those bases when we get to them. And I want to thank you guys for joining me, and we will catch you on the next one.